I think people now are looking more at what the companies stand for, what they're doing in terms of social justice and all that. I mean, I really think that especially, the younger population want to be associated with companies that are doing well, and that in terms of, social issues, in terms of, sustainability, all that kind of thing, volunteerism. I think all those things are things that companies have to look at.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, folks, and people, to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Today, my guest is Sue Kruskopf, who is the founder and CEO of KC Truth. Sue, how's it going today?
Hey, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, it's raining out and all that, but we've got a big company outing this afternoon. So considering we hardly have seen each other, it's going to be a good time.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear about that. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do at KC Truth and what sort of,
Sure.
comes to you up on a day-to-day?
Yeah. So I founded the agency, oh my gosh, back in 1988, which was quite a long time ago. The fact that I've survived this long in this advertising business is a testament to how thick my skin is. There's no question about it. And starting the agency in 1988, when really not many women were starting agencies at that time, was really new. But when the big agency that I was at, I looked around and didn't see too many women over the age of like 35 or 40 in the creative department. And I thought, this might not be a long-term career for me. So I better figure something out so I have more control over my life, so that's what happened. And
Cool.
So I started the agency back then.
And where is your agency now? If you do explain a snapshot.
Yeah. So we're located in Minneapolis. We have 25 people in Minneapolis. And we are, I think, fortunate to have, my persistence is what keeps me going, because I just won't take no for an answer. But I think it's also one of the things we're known for is really staying ahead of the curve in all things digital, and just making sure that we are continuing to guide our clients through that fire hose of digital options and everything that people have today. And and that clients have the hardest time, picking and choosing and understanding what they should be doing and all the different channels. And that's just something we really have excelled in. And I think it just really helps our clients. And we have both domestic and global clients that are all based primarily in the Midwest, but two of them, 3M and Entrust, are global companies, or actually three, Cargill too. Cargill's another big client of ours. So we're fortunate to have some Fortune 500 companies on our roster. So I'm really, really proud of that.
Awesome. I love that. So what for you in an industry that had, that seemed challenging, what would you say are the keys to success for you, both as a leader, like your own kind of leadership style within there, and then also as a company, as you've built it to 25 people, what is the key to success to be able to getting this far in a very competitive space?
Yeah. I think, everybody always says it, but I mean, I am the queen of culture. I mean, that is my job, is culture. And a lot of the lessons I've learned are things that are all pretty basic and common, and things your parents probably taught you, like, treat other people how you want to be treated yourself, be generous and kind and things like that. And I think that has been the key to our success in terms of our people, because people have a long tenure with our place. And I really like that, because I think they're part of the fabric. The leadership team is part of the fabric of who we are and where we started. And again, like I said, just really staying ahead of the curve all the time. We belong to a network of global agencies, both here in the US and abroad. And that really helps us. Really get a broad view and work with agencies all over the world. And I think that's really good too, to have a big world view of everything. So that's really important to me. So I think those are the key building blocks. It all comes down to people. I mean, every night those brains go down the elevator. Well, not anymore. Now they're at home, so they probably go have a cocktail. But it's like that's just. I mean, that those people are just so important, and consistency with our clients and that type of thing. I think is just really, really important. What was the second part of that question?
I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
we'll keep going. It was
Okay.
from a company perspective, but I think you
Yeah.
talked about it. So, partnerships with other agencies, being able to think, big outside yourself, the people and the culture, doing
Yeah.
stuff, how you're brought up, and the worldview. You have your offsite or an equivalent offsite today, and maybe you're
Yeah.
not doing strategic work, but why
Yeah.
is it important to get your people out of the office and
Well,
collaborating
yeah.
together?
Well, I think, and this, we're not collaborating much together today. I'm proud, unless it's like what we're having for lunch and what else we're going to keep doing. But as we all know, I mean, it's, we have, we've all, been at home, and culture, if culture is one of your defining characteristics, and the culture doesn't feel as strong when you're all in boxes on a screen, much of the time. And with that, between that and the, resignation tsunami that we're all going through in terms of losing people and replacing people, I just think being together is more important than ever, and getting out and connecting on a different level, because you just can't. We're a really collaborative company, and just, we've done a good job over COVID, but it's more the little things. I did think we're just missing all the little things. It's not, we can always have meetings, but it's the spontaneity and all that we're missing, that I think is really, really a problem. So that's kind of one of our, I think our biggest challenges, which is why we're doing this today, because we've had new people that have started and they haven't even met everybody yet. So, everybody in the world's going through the same thing we are. I'm sure there's no question about that.
Absolutely. But it's nice to hear about how different people approach it, because, in my opinion, the small stuff is the big stuff. If you
Yeah, right.
only do the big stuff and you don't do the small stuff, then you don't have a good foundation to build your team on.
Yes. So
Um,
true, Anthony. Yes, I agree completely.
so, why do you think this resignation tsunami is happening?
I just think that, once, and I think it all really started with the vaccine, when it started being apparent that we were going to go back to work. Everybody started to look at their own situation and kind of going, is this the best I can do? Can I do better? They've had more time to be online when they're at home. And I think that having the vaccine, allowed them the world's going to open up again. Maybe it's time for me to look around, because we've loyalty just isn't like it used to be. I mean, there's just no question about it. And also, a lot of people just decided not to go back to work. And I think that's a real problem. I really think that the economy would benefit and everything else, if we had more people going back to work. And I think that's another big part of it. So, I think a lot of companies are, going through the same thing. I mean, there's no question about it. So I think it's a cycle. I think the pendulum will swing the other way sometime. I wish I had a crystal ball to know when that's going to happen, but I don't. So
I got that.
it
Well,
goes.
I'm going to ask you about the work of the future. And I have a hypothesis that agencies and marketers are going to play a huge, huge part in this next component of HR and people. But I want to ask you about that after. Before I do, you
Yeah.
talk a lot about culture, and you talk a lot about how you were raised. So my dad was born in Minneapolis. He
Wow.
grew up in Edmonton, and I was raised in Vancouver. And Vancouver has a different way of doing things.
Uh-huh.
Uh, the East Coast has a different way of doing things.
Mhm.
How would you say the culture of your organization and the Midwest culture, does it help you do business? Do you find that doing business in that area, it's sort of consistent in terms of
Well,
how people work together and do
you
things?
know, everybody talks about Minnesota nice, like that's a thing, Minnesota nice, and it does not really exist at all. It really is Minnesota passive aggressive, and that's just how people are. And that's just the Midwest, right? So our agency is Truth for a reason, KC Truth, because from day one, we've said we're going to find the truth about our clients' businesses, and whether you like it or not, it might be bad news sometimes we have for you or whatever, but it's going to be truth, and it's no BS. I don't know if I can say that word, but on the air, but it's fine. But I've always believed in being a straight shooter, because I just think that right now there are not only are we more siloed as companies, we're all siloed into different different silos, and we're not talking to each other. And then what comes out of that is I think a lot of business jargon has come out of that, like swim lanes and all this, all these words and acronyms and all that. And we just always believe in trying to get people to just say what they really think and talk straight. And we actually hold truth workshops as one of the cornerstones of our business. And we hold those in the ultimate conference room we have at the agency, which is actually a bar downstairs, and that we turned an old bank into a bar. And that's where we have these truth workshops down there. And the beauty of these things is we take a company that, we have stakeholders from multiple disciplines within the company, like from sales, from product development, from engineering, all that. And we get everybody in a room, and it's kind of like therapy for these companies and these clients, because they're all in a room. It's a real comfortable room because it feels like an old bar. You're not in a conference room. And we get everybody's thoughts and feelings out about their company, the brand, the category that they see it. And everybody comes in rabble rousing, like, we know what the problem with it is. We know what we should stand for. And by the end of the day, they've heard everybody's point of view. And all of a sudden, what they came in, that they were ready to fall on a spear for, they are much more open to other ideas. And I think that's just a straight psychological thing, that I think people like to be heard, and they like to be included, and they like to be respected. And these meetings end up really bringing, they do call them therapy for, we've heard our clients say that, just because it is like bringing everybody into alignment over, what does this company stand for? Where are we going? What are we doing? And we don't decide all the answers right there, but we listen. You have two ears and one mouth, so we always believe in listening and hearing and taking it all in, what people are saying. And it's been very, very, it's been one of the cornerstones of the success of our agency for a number of years, for sure.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. It's Anthony here again. I just wanted to let you know, if you're enjoying today's episode, I'd love it if you could give us a review and a comment to let us know where you're listening from. It means a lot to us. It helps us with the algorithm. It also helps us get into the hands of more people so that we can keep bringing great guests onto the show. So please do that. Also, if you or your team are planning a strategic planning offsite coming up, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to see if we're a fit to facilitate, to support you and your team getting on the same page and getting clear about where you want to go. So you can visit smestrategy.net or click the link in the description. We'd appreciate both of those things. And now get us back to the episode.
That's awesome. I mean, my experience is the same, because we do strategic planning. We try to focus on some of those answers, but then when we talk to some people, they're like, hey, do you accept a copay? And I say, no. And I was having a coffee with my friend yesterday, who's he's like more traditional consulting, and they do spreadsheets and they do reports and they do analysis, and they say, like, what should you be moving around? Time and motion. Whereas us, it's like, how are you feeling today? Are you a red? Are you a yellow? Are you a green? But they're very different components and drivers to a business. And what I find interesting about your, like, I'll say it for you, no BS or no bullshit approach, is that you can get to the heart of the issue, which Minnesota nice, or however you want to call it, passive aggressive West Coast, they move away from the issues, and they try to, like, this is the central issue, the foundation of where you're trying to grow your business. But you can't do it if you're trying to kind of build around and away. What's your experience with that, like, as it relates to the marketing communication piece of it?
Well, a lot of times we've even had, this has happened a few times, where the CEO comes into one of these meetings and he thinks everybody in his company knows exactly what they stand for and what they do. And it's just been eye-opening for him or her to hear that people don't really get what's all going on here, and all that. So it has literally caused some people who thought it was a sales organization, and really it's a support organization or something else. I'm using that as an example to leave. Unfortunately, just because once the business is defined, in terms of what the song sheet is that everybody's going to go off and talk about and project in communications and everything else that we do, they didn't know that's what the program is. So it can be a game-changing thing in a good way, because it really gets at the root of what that business is about and what the authenticity of that business. because people, I mean, the truth is the most powerful motivator on earth. And if you're not, we all know we've been living through a lot in these past years, how important the truth is. And it's just, it's something that a lot of agencies, keep doing different things and start here and go do something else and then go another way. And we've always stayed true to what we do, in finding the truth. It's just the channels and the tools and all that we can use have changed. So, that's really what's going on.
Absolutely. And I find it interesting, the balance between truth and perspective, because one person's perspective is their truth. But
Yeah.
when you have a group of people that talk about it, then you can actually take someone else's perspective and you get a more true, if that's a thing.
Well, and then especially when we represent the objective point of view, we're representing the audience. I mean, the people that they're trying to sell to are the ones with the money, and we try to get a really good understanding of who their audience is. And so if you can't convince your audience, you're not going to make the sales that you need to make your numbers, so we're always trying to, that's what we're always trying to do is get at that truth, as hard as it is sometimes. But it's the most valuable and it's the most authentic and real, so.
Absolutely. I tell people that nobody really gives a shit about you. They care about themselves. So how do you focus on themselves?
Yeah.
So I did ask if it'd be okay to ask you. So you're in Minnesota. We talked about truth being it really important to share what's going on and to be authentic. As I mentioned earlier, we're hosting a diversity and inclusion summit on the 21st of October. It's going to be done by this podcast airs. But what has been the shift over the past 2 years in terms of the truth of your community, of like what people are dealing with in the Minnesota, Minneapolis area? And we could say, larger, like the Midwest United States, like what is that? What's going on there from your perspective?
It's been just brutal. I have to say, I mean, we were where George Floyd was murdered, and, just seeing the fallout and living amongst that just changes you. I mean, it is, we had our windows boarded up. We're right down where the trial was and had our windows boarded up and all that. And our city, has just changed dramatically, in addition to COVID and people not being downtown, but the, just the destruction. That's what's happened. Now I think we're on the healing path. I think that we are through the hardest trial, I hope. I think that's past us, but it's just changed us so much. And let's be honest, I mean, the Midwest is pretty leans to be a very, white community in different towns. And I think people's eyes have been really open to, how diversity is such an important thing. And especially obviously in advertising. I mean, it was more unusual, 30 years ago, even to be a woman in advertising when, that was very unusual to start an agency. And I still think diversity is an issue that we are addressing all the time, because it's not just women, but it is, people of color and everything else. And I think everybody's working hard on how do we integrate and find people, because that perspective on life is just so incredibly important in what we do every day, so. Anyway, so that it's changed dramatically. I wish that, buildings hadn't been destroyed and all that, because there's a lot of history and immigrants who had started businesses who, had their businesses destroyed and all that. So it was a brutal year for us, more than anything. So, but grateful to come out of it and see where we can go from there,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was like, like I don't want to use the word awakening, but that's the word that comes to mind.
Yeah,
Like
it is.
it's shifted a lot of stuff in the mindset of people, and obviously not being like on the ground there and seeing that. And I think it's shown that for the most part, we're more alike than different. And I think it's interesting, all of the social issues that came out of that. And as I've been more in tune to diversity inclusion, talking about it in media, in the marketplace and communication, to say, hey, like there are all of these subsections of people, there are diverse groups of people, and you need to include them. But we could talk for hours about that, so I won't. I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about these changes, obviously social issues, culture issues, work from home, COVID, all of that stuff. We talked about the great resignation, which that along with this has created a bunch of change.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about adaptive and brands being adaptive to the future. So from your crystal ball perspective, how do you see the role of advertising and marketing contributing to companies being able to better attract talent? How can they solve this great resignation through the power of marketing communications?
Yeah, really good question. I think people now are looking more at what the companies stand for, what they're doing in terms of social justice and all that. I mean, I really think that especially, the younger population want to be associated with companies that are doing well, and that in terms of, social issues, in terms of, sustainability, all that kind of thing, volunteerism. I think all those things are things that companies have to look at, because people want their brand to be associated with a company that represents the things that they believe in. So I think we're all finding ways to take on more initiatives like that. In all reality, we've all been through brutal years with our businesses, and my business has been through ups and downs throughout all these years. And we always learn, but I think that that's going to be the biggest thing. And I think it's being real and authentic. I mean, we are, truth permeates our culture. I mean, there is no bullshit with, people being able to come in and talk to me or talk to anybody about what goes on. Because I think in a lot of companies, politics gets in the way. At least that was my experience in big agencies, that politics got in the way of everything, of great work, of great thinking. So we try to kind of decimate any political issues to make sure that we're all talking to each other. We all have a voice. We all have an opinion. We're all heard. I think people want to be heard and feel like they can be, a contributor to the growth of the company as well. So I think it's just, all those human values are just going to become more and more important. And I hate to say it too. I mean, a lot of people are leaving because people are offering a lot more money than they were, I mean, that's just it. You get it. I mean, that's what happens. So I think it's just a combination of all those things. And I just hope that, it comes back to middle ground, in some ways, because that will be better for all business, I think, ultimately. Because ultimately, if you're paying more for people, you can't hire as many people, or you have to, I mean, there's multiple things that come with that, in terms of costs can go up and all that sort of thing. So, it's what we're all struggling with, but there's got to be a silver lining in it somewhere.
Well, I think it'll rebalance one way or the other, because again, if everybody has to charge more, I think we're just delayed on inflation. Everything is going to cost more. And I think as a business, we won't get into automation and technology and all of that stuff today, but there's a lot of different levers to pull. But I agree with you that I think it's got to recenter somewhere. And I think everybody listening is saying, well, how do I do that? Well, I'll say, hey, do a strategic planning session, get realigned, talk to Sue and her team, have those real honest conversations. So Sue, as we finish up today, let's say somebody walks into your bar bank, a senior leader, a CEO, and they're saying, Sue, give it to me straight. What do I need to know? What do I need to consider moving forward? What would you tell them, or what would be the number one piece of guidance you'd want them to consider as we move into 2022?
I would probably say be honest with yourself at first, because I think a lot of people can hide under the clouds of what they want to believe versus what the truth is and what the reality is. And then surround yourself with the smartest people and that you can, and then try to figure it out, because ultimately, and make sure you're passionate about it. I mean, I think that you have to be passionate about it, or the money won't follow. I mean, I really think that's what you have to start with, being passionate and true and authentic. And I feel like then all good things come from that. I don't know, pretty simple, but that's kind of the things I think about. So I hope other people do. I don't know. And have a good time. I mean, I just, it's funny because I didn't think I'd ever be this old in this business, but I just get too energized, and I love being around the people that I work with. And I get so much energy from that. And I just think, you got to harness all that too, because, you always learn more from new perspectives coming in from the outside than you do from in your own head, for sure. So that's another good thing.
I love it. Keep it simple. Listen to others. Have a good time.
Yeah.
And come visit.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, speaking of which, where can people learn more about what you do? Where can they connect with you? And where can they initiate a conversation?
Pretty easy. It's kctruth.com. That's our website. And there's a lot of information on there. And yeah, always love to, the strategic part of business is one of the most exciting things there is. I mean, no good work comes out of a bad strategy. Good work only comes out of a good strategy. So you have to have both of those things to make anything successful. So I think what you're doing is awesome. So that's terrific.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Sue. It's been a blast. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
I know I will. Okay. Thank you, awesome. Anthony. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. So my guest today has been Sue Kruskopf, who is the founder and CEO of KC Truth. So be sure to check out her work. Be sure to connect with her. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe. My name's Anthony Taylor. This has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, everyone.